you know what? Let's start with New York. We didn't get to have this back and forth with Drew. Drew said he wanted to vote for Eric Adams when we were talking to Drew Pavlou on Saturday. We had a conversation with him. If you missed it, it's on the live channel. It's been released. And one of the first things he said is how he wanted to vote for Eric Adams, even though he's not a New Yorker, he's an Australian. And I wanted to go back and forth with him over it because obviously I would not vote for Eric Adams under really any circumstance. I can't believe I'm saying this. I would probably vote for Curtis Silva before I would vote for Eric Adams. Purely out of the fact that Eric Adams took that big Turkish money. And you know, if you're not loyal to the American people, if you're not loyal to your people, if you're loyal to foreign governments before the safety of your own city, when he was being asked to overlook safety regulations for the Turkish government in return for vacation trips and, you know, Turkish airline credits and such, what is he loyal to? If he's willing to go that deep and go that out there when it comes to your divided loyalties, like Bob Menendez and the gold bars from Egypt in his pocket, you just can't trust these people. You just can't. And so the quicker they are out of the Democratic Party, the quicker they are out of politics, the quicker they are out of elected office, the better for everybody. And so I would like to say Eric Adams going away is no big, there's no burden off my shoulders. I'm not going to be singing his serenade outside of one reason. And man, I still love that old video of him searching through that bedroom, trying to find there's a bullet behind the picture frame. Oh my gosh, there's drugs in the teddy bear. Search your children's room. It was that type of content. I wish the city of New York could keep him on for a public safety role. If Mamdani wins, which I think is the almost certain possibility now. I'm not going to say almost certain, because Mamdani has never won a general election like this before. It's the highest age he's been at. The only general election he's won has been for, city council. It has not been for the mayorship. So there's still some untested territory. But with Eric Adams out, the hope is that there'll be some coalition that'll build together. Like all the people who are going to vote for Eric will go to Andrew Cuomo or Silva. And then one of those two might drop out, because with Eric Adams out, the race does not change significantly. I looked at the numbers. I know Harry Enton went into it. Others went into it. And the biggest progress that's been made is they've made a most favorable projection that I've seen is that it went from plus 19 Mamdani to plus 15 Mamdani. That's still double digits, and it's still solid double digits. You would need to jump another 6 points just to get to single digits. And in fact, let's say that they did do that. Let's say that Silva or Eric Adams was to drop, Silva or Cuomo, what was it that Silva said about Cuomo? And this is why I don't think this is going to happen, because Cuomo's, has some scandals on his record, and Silva, the Republican nominee, that would need to drop out for this coalition to build against Mamdani and the race not to be divided as Cuomo's running as an independent. He said famously about Cuomo that he was slapping fannies and killing grannies. So I don't think he's going to drop out in order to endorse the guy he said he was doing that type of slam poetry that was getting snaps on Fox News for. I don't think that's going to happen. But if he did, even if he did, the divide and the most favorable projections has Mamdani still up by like 7-8 points. So right now, the situation has not even gotten out of the double digits range. It has not moved the needle that much. Eric Adams was the candidate that had the least favorability. That was the candidate that had the lowest, vote share when it came to how people said they were going to vote as the current incumbent mayor of New York. But I do hope that if Mamdani wins, if Silva's cats are able to do all that voter fraud to get him in there, I don't know what happens. But whoever wins, I hope that Eric Adams can keep some sort of role as a type of gruff McCrime dog type figure for the city, where he just kind of runs like a social media account where he just pumps out bangers on behalf of the city. That's what I would appreciate. And that's the only thing I really appreciate about Eric Adams. I will say his record, you know, climbing up the police force is somewhat inspirational. Sucks that it, you know, ended this way. Slapping fannies and killing grannies was such a killer, man. Was such a killer. And even if he did drop out and endorse Andrew Cuomo, I mean, they couldn't Mondami. I mean, they've already maxed out the donation share you even can get for a mayoral run. Couldn't he just run ads of just Silva saying that over and over and over again and saying these are the people behind him, the ones who know what he did? I mean, he's just so scandal ridden. Each and every one of these candidates were flawed against Mamdani. And this is the one thing that kind of throws a wrench in Mamdani's victory in my mind for trying to use it as a, you know, as a thermometer for where we are in the country. Number one, New York is New York, okay? And New York ain't Baltimore. Baltimore ain't, you know, Chicago, Illinois. Like these cities aren't all the same, and New York is not going to be the same as like suburban Texas. Like trying to figure out what works there is not necessarily going to work there. You can find certain trends. I think, for example, affordability and housing being a major issue that got him over the line is something that is probably universally appealing. But the big things that are gonna be throwing a wrench in is number one, where it is. You know, you know, you could say that the circumstances of where this election took place says that maybe you shouldn't have these types of candidates in other locations, just that it might work here. And the other big wrench, even though, you know, the first one's not as difficult to deal with, you could try other candidates, you could, you know, you can move from there. But the second one is he didn't really have to deal with a strong candidate. And when I say that, I know Andrew Cuomo's established. I know he's a big name, but every single person he ran up against was flawed in some way. Uh, Eric Adams was deeply corrupt. People are not happy with how the city was running, and so he had to be the one that was claiming how the city was going. And he was making sweetheart deals with the Trump administration in a city that cannot despise its native son more. Right? So Eric Adams, he was the lowest rated of them all. Then you go over to Curtis Silva, who is the second lowest rated. He's sitting at like 17% right now with Eric Adams out of the race. Well, he's the Republican candidate. And while, you know, I could just talk about like the electability of a man in like a red, like a fun red commando hat and with all of his 17 like old grandma cats. And I'm saying that as somebody who loves cats. And, you know, there's certain things about him that are like fun or appealing. But as a Republican in New York, you know, Rudy Giuliani was the last one to pull it off, and people don't have a good memory of Rudy Giuliani. And the big things that made Rudy Giuliani a nationally recognized figure, for example, his 9/11 response, was, I think, this is my opinion, I think it was largely exaggerated, as in they made him look better than he actually was. For example, defunding for the New York City Police Department and the type of equipment that they needed, including better communication equipment when there were communication outages during the day of. Like, this is stuff that if you want good responses to fires and disasters, you want to fund the New York City Fire Department quite well. There's like real questions about how he did in that performance, even though that's what he got a lot of his national credibility for. But of course, his other time running the city, you know, other domestic issues. So it wasn't. That's the last candidate that did it. It's been a long time. No one else has been able to pull it off since, and he's nowhere near it. So the fact that he's a Republican, the fact that he's got that R next to his name is a real issue. And the Republican Party has written off New York, and they've written off New York City. So they aren't putting any resources into it in order to try to reverse the situation. So Silva fucking lost cause too. Then you get to Andrew Cuomo. And so you get the candidate he already beat in the primary, which is probably where he beat him, which was the most difficult for him. Actually, beating him again might be easier, especially if Silva's not dropping out. It might be by a larger margin than it was in the primary. But Andrew Cuomo, he's going from governorship to mayorship. That's a demotion. I mean, I don't know what you would call that. I don't know how you think Andrew Cuomo views it. Now, maybe you guys at home, well, that's public service, Whether you're going for city council, whether you're going for county council, if you go from president to congressman, that's a type of demotion. There's a reason why Anthony Weiner did not just immediately run back for his old seat. He went out there, tried to get something, and he failed. But it's a demotion. He's going down the totem pole because of how the COVID response went while he was governor of New York. There's a reason why Kathy Hochul is governor of New York right now. And it's not that long ago. It was not that long ago. Kathy Hochul did not win an election to get where she is. She became governor of New York, and she's not that popular. In fact, her recent endorsement of Mamdani might be some attempt to try to get on the bus before the victory comes into the station. And she was the one that was holding out on Mamdani for a bit. A bunch of the Democratic Party is still holding out on Mamdani, despite some favorable posts by the DNC on Twitter. So he's coming down in level due to the COVID scandal, due to the groping scandals and the kissing scandal and the "I'm just an Italian," response did not really communicate well to at least the Democratic base that makes up the Democratic Party in New York City, and certainly seems to have had an effect, or he would have won the Democratic Party and he would not be running as an independent. So he's a flawed candidate from multiple scandals who's coming down from the governorship to run for mayor. In fact, that name recognition he's carrying over from the governorship is really his main tool, his main usefulness. I mean, it was his main asset in this race. And then Mamdani won the primary and became a name that people know across the country. So how much of an asset is that right now? Really? So, actually. So the one thing that I have to say about Mamdani is I think he's going to win. I think he's on a path to victory. I'm happy it's not going to be Eric Adams. I wouldn't vote for Cuomo, I don't think. Mamdani's not my perfect candidate, but he's probably the one I would vote for if I was put in the circumstance. But the thing that I want to ask is, if this was a different race, if it wasn't Andrew Cuomo, if it was a more respected local leader who is coming up in level, somebody with some passion in their eyes, somebody with some desire, who wants to reach heights they haven't reached before and don't have either the record to scandalize or the scandals, period, to scandalize, would it be different? And when I say that, I mean that on multiple levels. Because some people just say, would it be different with the same resources? Would it be different under the same circumstances? But it wouldn't be the same circumstances. The entire situation would be different. Do you really think that think about this from an investor's point of view, from somebody who goes out and backs a candidate. Right now, until very recently, it was a three-way divided opposition to Mamdani. If you are somebody who wants to back a candidate to stop an avowed socialist from becoming mayor of New York, who do you back? Do you back the current mayor, who's the lowest of the pack? Do you vote the Republican, who's a Republican in New York City? Good luck with that. Or do you vote the scandal-ridden person who already lost to him in the primary? If you're smart, you keep your money in your pocket, and maybe you spend it on the city council instead to tie him up lower level. You think of something else, because it seems like, lost cause, maybe. If the ship is sinking, you pump the raft up. But if it was not that, if instead of a divided opposition, it was one candidate, say an independent, or hell, back in the primary, it wasn't, Cuomo and Mamdani. It was a more respected city council member or somebody who was going from Congress to the mayorship, which, isn't really a demotion. It is the wealthiest city in America. They could be still climbing up. How would the circumstances change? Well, number one, if they had less scandal to scandalize, that would be very useful. It's very easy to play attack on Cuomo, very easy to play attack on the situation that Eric Adams has to basically defend in New York right now. So I think that this lack of scandal would pose a different situation for Mamdani, but also much more resources. If it's a non-scandalized, non-divided opposition, I think more money and more PACs are going to flow in and try to support against Mamdani to stop him from getting elected. Whether it's going to be the developers who are not going to be happy about or the renters. We're not going to be happy about the rent freeze. Whether it's going to be some sort of anti-socialist group that's angry about the fact that he describes himself as a socialist, or they're hearing about these publicly funded grocery stores in each of the 5 boroughs, and they don't like that idea. They think it's a waste of government money. Or you're a Wall Street guy who, quite frankly, just doesn't want to be in a city ran by a red when you're made of green, right? Either way, all these people would have a better option to invest in the opposition. See, Bernie Sanders lost twice, but he got close. The first time he went from 2% of the country knowing his name to within a percentage point of beating like a few percentage. It was so close. Not in the final delegate count, but when you talk about the final vote count, when you talk about the final tally, when you talk about the popularity Bernie had, the momentum that he had, the fact that he had a transformative vision when Hillary just had a, to the images of many people, a trim around the edges vision. Even though Hillary might say in one sentence, I want, much more paid time leave than Donald Trump then says he wants after copying her. Donald Trump went in there with a flamethrower type approach. Like, this needs to be burnt down and started over again, where she was talking about trimming on the edges and it didn't appeal. And she was not a particularly popular politician, and her authenticity was put into question by voters, as she did not come off as well authentic. Not to everyone. Either way, if it was Bernie, who knows how it would have gone? I can't say, but he got very close in that primary. And then the second time around in 2020, he got very close in that primary too. I was in South Carolina when Bernie won Nevada, and I watched the betting odds make him over a 50% betting favorite to become the Democratic nominee for president. And then I watched the coalition coalesce around Joe Biden before Super Tuesday, and all these people drop out, waiting to see what Elizabeth Warren would do, as she kept her mouth shut, and she stayed out of the race. She stayed out of that close race, going for something she clearly could not get at that point. And again, Bernie missed it by what felt like a hair to his supporters. And this shows that if you want to make transformative change, especially against vested interests, those vested interests are going to come out and they're going to come against you. They're going to push against you. They're going to run against you. Donna Brazil's going to give Hillary Clinton the questions in advance. I think some people blew it when it comes to the rigging, or when it comes to like the coin flips in Iowa with Mayor Pete, and they did X, Y, Z. I think some people exaggerate, but the idea that organized finance and a norm within the party and those who coalesced around Biden did not work to make sure it wasn't Bernie, or they didn't want to organize to make sure it wasn't Bernie, both due to some of the policies he supported, but also due to the fact that Bernie's own admission, he was not a great back scratcher. He was not maybe the best at building these types of close political relationships, which he admitted. He's not good at calling people on their birthday and doing that. He never even called Jim Clyburn to even possibly seek his endorsement. I mean, was he going to get it? Probably not. But there's a question about making the call to maybe see if they just keep their hands to their side and just wait it out, instead of coming out and endorsing Joe Biden, winning South Carolina in a landslide before setting up his victory in Super Tuesday. And so the reason I bring this all up is I see what's probably going to come up and what's probably going to happen in New York City. And what I think is probably going to happen is Mondami is going to win. But we should not read that necessarily as translating into a victorious strategy everywhere. He had a fantastic, authentic campaign. He spoke to issues that everybody cared about. He ran against very flawed opponents. That's something that, you can't always count on. And a divided opposition, which is, again, something you cannot always count on. So there's certain things about his authenticity, about him speaking to issues, that counts good for him, that people should take up and should move other places. But how much should we take this as meaning something for other areas, whether, we should have candidates like Mondami running in rural Texas, or suburban Texas, or suburban Maryland, wherever else it could be, or even Baltimore. I don't know. That's a lot more inconclusive. And so I think that we should take away that this type of candidate can win. We can't take away this type of candidate can beat name recognition. We should take away that that word that he attached to himself was not necessarily a killer in the richest city in America, but we cannot take away that this is necessarily an indication that this is the way forward in every other city with candidates like Mondami or exactly like Mondami. If you're going to get somebody to win in Baltimore, they're going to have to be somebody that speaks to the needs of Baltimoreans. Affordable housing is going to be one of those needs, but does that mean they take up all the aesthetics of Mondami? Maybe not. Maybe not. Either way, though, I think Mondami's on a way to victory.